moving into today's stuff, starting with a little story. Once upon a time, a hardy couple of Catonians set off to Hout Bay beach on a spring day that should have been spring, where it was more like winter. Crisp, cold air, but blue sky. And they went, as hardy Catonians do, barefoot, down to the beach. And if you've ever gone to Hout Bay beach, there's quite a long stretch of sand before you get to the water. And they went onto the beach barefoot, and at the top, towards the car park, it's kind of dry and grainy, and that soft sand kind of moves through your toes and over your feet, and it's not yet that cold because the bit of morning sun that's there has warmed it already a little bit. And they were walking towards the water, and it was one of those days where you could smell that kelp that's starting to dry and almost rot in the sun, that special, unique smell that you only get from this area. And of course, the salty sea air and the sound of the waves rolling in, and the birds flying overhead, including the different exotic birds that Hout Bay is known for. And you'd be hearing those sounds as you walk along the beach. And you can almost taste the salt around here. There's so much of it on those misty mornings when there's that slight bit of fog. If you look across towards Chapman's Peak, you can see it's not quite clear. It's kind of foggy along the cliffs. And you can kind of taste that as you walk along the beach, as they did. And they walked along towards the far end of the beach and were enjoying it as they put their feet in the water. You could actually feel that icy cold Atlantic sort of washing up, washing down, carrying the sand back, washing down, carrying the sand back into the sea as the sea waves and greets us as we move along. And that's what they did. They were enjoying their walk and feeling the sun on their face, and they noticed, far off in the distance, a strange, peculiar kind of figure. Sort of a bit foggy perhaps, because they couldn't quite make out what it was, but they were curious. Because it was an unusual movement. A figure that just kind of stood in one spot and kept doing the same repetitive motion over and over and over again. They couldn't make out, what is that? But they were curious. So they thought, let's go have a look. Our internal maps of reality can never be the external reality that we're looking at. And this is why. What you see there is the famous, in our field, NLP Communication Model. That is in your manual. Okay. And what this model tells you is basically that the map is not the territory. And it tells you why it's not. Okay. Because this model of communication explains what we do inside us with pure sensory information, and then how what we do inside our heads determines the way we feel, what we do with our bodies, and what we do in terms of pictures and sounds inside our head, what we say to ourselves, which then drives our behavior. And that the external reality, the thing we're actually experiencing, has very little to do with what we end up doing in response to it. What has everything to do with what we do in response to our external reality has to do with how we distort, generalize, and delete information. Those are called universal modeling processes in NLP. And basically, we distort, generalize, and delete information through our neurological filters, which are the programs that we have acquired through our life experiences. So, time, space, matter, and energy are one of those neurological filters. When we change our relationship to time, space, matter, and energy, we change our perception of things. That is a major section of your master practitioner syllabus that we don't go into much here, but some of the other things that some of the other filters we're about to get to are definitely things we're going to be getting into, like language. as you've heard me define in the NLP definition already, we are influenced by language, the language used by others and the language we use within our own heads. That language has influenced our beliefs, our values in life, which are also neurological filters, as we see below. And that language then determines what happens inside us, which then drives our behavior. Memories of the past. You walk past a bakery. Where does your mind go? Does it transport your awareness to a time many years ago when you walked past the bakery somewhere else, or you visited something with a friend, or the school, or whatever it might be? Scents, the sense of smell, are tremendously linked to the memory part of our brain. How often do you catch a scent of something and your awareness immediately brings up a memory? Could be ages ago, could be so far back that the mental picture that comes up is not clear because it's maybe at a very young age, but there's something there. I know that from somewhere. All had that kind of experience? So memories then have a lot to do with our internal state. Decisions we've made in the past have a lot to do with our current beliefs. Okay? You make a decision in the past, you achieve a particular outcome by making that decision. You learn this decision achieves that outcome. You're going to learn a lot about secondary gain in NLP. Secondary gain, one could say, is why, as a coach or therapist, your clients come to you. It's because they've got a problem, they've tried to make changes, but there is a hidden benefit to them having the problem that they're not consciously aware of, which is why they keep having the problem. Because at an unconscious level, a long time ago, they made a decision and it got them a certain result. They now, at the unconscious level, know that kind of behavior gets me that kind of result. When we, through asking questions like those in your well-formed outcomes question list, elicit what the secondary gain is, the hidden benefit behind the problem behavior, we can then help the client to find new, resourceful ways of satisfying the real thing that they want. So when we know what the secondary gain is, we can help clients to fulfill that without them having to do the unwanted behavior in order to achieve that. Jeepers, have you followed me there? Does that make sense? Okay. We'll be getting onto secondary gain because it's something you want to always look out for, listen out for when clients present their problems, because when you know what it is, you'll know exactly what holds that problem in its place and exactly how to change it. Meta programs is something we only cover at Masters. These are your most unconscious filters. They are your deep personality traits that are learned. They're learned right in the beginning, in your imprint years, the first 6-7 years of your life. And they become the blueprint for unconscious competence. Everything you do automatically. And when you know what people's meta programs are, you can very quickly develop rapport with them. And when you've got rapport, anything is possible. So some people will say that your meta programs, being your deepest, most unconscious neurological filters, are things you're born with. But what seems to be the case through observing is that people actually learn these things from their caregivers. So in the first 6 years of our life, we're most imprinted with the values of others, and meta programs really are values. Values and beliefs. Values are what motivate us. You're either motivated by what you don't want, or you're motivated by what you do want. You're motivated either by the stick or by the carrot. You either want to do things because you don't want to suffer the negative consequences of not getting it done, or you want to do things because you look forward to experiencing the positive outcomes of getting those things done. When you know what somebody's motivation strategy is, the values that drive them, you can really do magical work with that person. And if you hear through a person's language that what motivates them is what they don't want, see a red flag. I can't stand that job, but I have to go. I don't like doing that thing, but I have to, because if I don't, then all the negatives. When you hear people speak about the necessity of having to do things as their core motivation to get things done, that is a very negative and harsh energy that's driving them day in and day out. And that is going to lead to incongruence, health-related problems, sleepless nights, stress and anxiety. Because when we're motivated by what we don't want, in other words, the things we want to avoid, the internal pictures in our mind all the time are the things we don't want. Negative pictures, disaster, crisis. And they live their life by means of crisis management. Their life is one big fat crisis to be managed. And you'll hear that in their language. Manage your crisis and move on to beyond that. Change your motivation strategy to become more in touch with the positive outcomes that you want to achieve. And when you know that somebody's motivated by what they don't want, you'll hear that come through in their language, and you'll bring that into their conscious awareness, and then you'll start to help them to elicit positive values that they can move towards and help them to install those new positive-oriented values using NLP and HNLP techniques so that they can have a more positive motivation. And attitudes. Generally positive, negative. What attitude do you bring to a situation? Is it one that helps you deal with the situation resourcefully? Is it one that puts you into an unresourceful state? We do one of three things. We distort, generalize, or delete information. And when we get into the meta model, you're going to discover exactly what are distortions, what are generalizations, what are deletions. How can you pick them up in people's language, detect them, so that you can become aware of how they're carving up the pie of reality, what they're doing inside their heads, and how that's then resulting in their internal representation, the pictures they're making inside their heads. And those pictures give simultaneous rise to a corresponding state, which is a feeling, which is an emotion, which gives rise to a simultaneous corresponding physiology. Every state has a physiology. Yeah? Depression has a physiology. Confidence has a physiology. Excitement has a physiology. Happiness has a physiology. Every state has a physiology. So if you want to get out of, here's a quick fix. I'm not a fan of quick fixes, but sometimes they're useful as part of something else. Huh? You want to get out of a depression state? World on your shoulders, looking down. Just roll that heavy world off your shoulders. Put your shoulders back. Put your chest out. Take a deep belly breath so that you're not hyperventilating out here the way stressed people do. And just pretend. Create an internal picture. And smile. Have an internal representation of you smiling. Imagine you could smile. And you'll find that your lips have a tendency to move up. And when that happens, in this physiology, the opposite of depression might be happiness. In the happiness physiology, it's very difficult to have depressive thoughts. It's a great breaker state, a pattern interrupt, as we spoke about earlier. The best pattern interrupt is to change your physiology, and the easiest way to change your physiology is to change what you're doing with your breath. Just start breathing differently. Or just get moving. Just do something. Change what you're doing with your body. Your internal state will change instantly, and with that, your internal representation, the pictures you're making, will change as well, which then gives rise to greater behavioral flexibility. You have more choice. Those are the things that drive our behaviors. Well, then this would be the HNLP communication model. You can't really see it perhaps so clearly, but there's another arrow going that way, okay? Because that's what it does. Our behavior then interacts with the external stimuli. The state we're in, the way we feel and what we're doing has an impact. There's a relationship between me and anything that I sense in my external environment. Okay? There's an energy that moves between me and the person I'm interacting with, and me and anything else. If I didn't have a relationship with the object of my reference, then I wouldn't know what it is. We might observe the interaction between two people over there, and my view on the situation about what's happening between those two people might be very different to yours based on our neurological filters. And each and every single individual in the world has very unique neurological filters. There's something very unique. This is what differentiates us as human beings. But what makes us all the same as human beings is that we all do this. We all have this process going on inside our heads. And when you're aware that you are doing all this stuff which manipulates, we are manipulative. We manipulate pure sensory information all the time. And that determines what we do inside our heads. The pictures we make, the states we go into, and that is what drives our behavior, not this. This, ladies and gentlemen, will be something we refer to every day for the next 7 days. This is an explanation for how NLP works. Remember the couple who went walking along the beach? And they saw that strange and mysterious figure off in the distance, doing something quite unusual. So they thought they'd go have a look. And as they got closer to this mysterious figure, they noticed it was a person. And the person was doing something like picking up something off the ground and throwing it into the sea, picking up something else out of the sand and flicking it into the ocean. And as they got closer, they noticed that this person was picking up starfish, and that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of starfish had washed up onto the beach. And there was one person picking up one starfish at a time and flicking them elegantly back into the ocean. And they looked at each other, and they looked at this person, and then they decided to ask the person, "What are you doing?" The person said, "It's just what you see. I'm rescuing these starfish." And they said to him, "Well, what difference could you possibly make? You're one person, and there's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of starfish washed up all over this beach." And with that, the person bent down, picked up a starfish, tossed it into the water, and said, "Made a difference to that one.